What's up, basketball fans? Welcome to the Raptors Report. It is time to talk about the Toronto Raptors. They made a ton of draft picks just in the second round alone. We know they drafted Jacoby Walter, but the Raptors drafted a handful of players who I will be covering in today's video, and I find it kind of ironic. I mean, Masai Ujiri said bringing in three rookies in one draft class is really difficult because you can only develop so many of them, and yet the Raptors drafted around 5, 6 guys, signed a bunch of guys to two-way deals as well. So I will be breaking that down for you in today's video. So if you're ready to watch, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you wish to hit the subscribe button as well, that would be very much appreciated. So with that being said, let's get into today's video. So the first player I want to cover in this video is one that I think has an absolutely insane ceiling, and it wouldn't be a far stretch to say the Raptors got an absolute steal here, because Ulrich Chomche should have gone a little bit higher. He is quite raw, but I want to talk about him. For those that are not familiar with him, he has an insane amount of potentials. But let's familiarize yourself with who Ulrich is. So he is listed at 6'10", nearly 6'11", without shoes. Again, with shoes, he's 6'11", 7 foot. He weighs 232.4 pounds. He's got an insane wingspan of 7 foot 4 inches. One of the younger players in this year's NBA draft class. Is only 18 years old, and he plays a power forward and center position. Now, he did play in the African Basketball League, and his stats may not jump out at you, but believe me when I say this, I'll talk about his strengths and weaknesses in just a moment, but he's got a really high ceiling. But in terms of his stats here, he averaged 13 points, 9 rebounds, 3.3 assists, shot the ball not that well for someone his size, 42.4% on 11 attempts per game, made about 4.7, shot the three-point ball, however, quite well, 38.1%, 7 attempts a game, 2.7 made, and free throws were respectable at 75%, 1.3 attempts, only 1 made, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But his steals, 1.3 steals and 2.7 blocks. Now, it is absolutely insane to me that, you know what, he fell to the 57th spot. The Raptors ended up made a trade with the Memphis Grizzlies to select him, but we do have to talk about his strengths because he has a ton of them, and he has I truly believe he has one of the best potentials in the second round. And maybe, you know what, do not be surprised if he ends up being a really, really nice pick for the Raptors moving forward. Now, in terms of his strengths, he has a really high ceiling. Now, why do I say this? Am I saying this because my favorite team drafted him? Absolutely not. But when you look at his tape, you look at some of the highlights, one thing that really jumps out at you is the way he moves around the ball, and it'll kind of go with what some of the other strengths I'm mentioning, but he's an insane athlete. The way he's able to cover ground is almost Giannis-esque. Now, I don't want to compare every raw athlete and say they're the next Giannis, but just some of the skill sets he does possess, like shot blocking ability, potentially a good three-point shot. Again, he's going to be many years away from being productive at the NBA level, but he still has a really high ceiling. And I say this because of the way he can block shots, the way he covers grounds, and we'll talk about his weaknesses. I don't want to reveal all his weaknesses now, but let's talk about some of the other strengths as well. And that is that he is an insane athlete. Like I said, he just has so much potential. And when you look at the way the NBA has been trending, it has trended towards more mobile centers, but also ones that can shot block, can shoot threes, and the way he moves his feet defensively, he's just amazing. In terms of some of his other skill sets he possesses, which are really good, he covers a ton of ground, and he's got great shot blocking ability. Like I said, sometimes he finds himself in weird situations where, you know what, he might not be able to get the block, but just when you think he can't get it, he'll run with his amazing speed for his size to be 6'11", 6'10", to be able to do that. It's absolutely fabulous. He's also very mobile for his position. Again, he's a power forward center position, but he moves like a small forward. He's also got potential to be a solid passer. His skill sets are definitely there. He is still quite raw, which is, I think, why he fell in the draft. But regardless, you can see the potential in there, and why not on a team like the Raptors that have great developmental skills? And he's just got an insane ceiling, and who knows better to develop African players that are very raw than Masai Ujiri and the Toronto Raptors, who have done a great job with players like Pascal in the past. So let's talk about some of his weaknesses as well, though, because he has a ton, and we do have to discuss those as well. Now, as I stated, he does need a lot of development. He's going to be someone that is probably going to be in the G League for the full first season. He'll be very lucky if he sees minutes with the Raptors, not because I don't think he's capable of, just because of how much development I think they really need to develop and focus on, unless the Raptors clearly tank again like they did last year. Maybe he can see some minutes as well. In terms of some of the other weaknesses, he needs more court awareness, which is what I was talking about when I say he's kind of finds himself out of position. He doesn't always read the court very well defensively, but when he does make mistakes on the defensive side, he doesn't read some plays happening. He is a little bit slow because he's still learning the game as well. He's someone that's going to rush back and get those really surprise blocks that you really do not expect him to. The fact that he has the speed he does at the power forward position and the fact that he's a very lengthy and agile mobile big, it really allows him to do things like that that you don't expect most centers to do or even most players to do. He also needs to shoot the free throws a lot better, and maybe, you know what, you can even add in the brackets there, maybe get to the free throw line a lot better. Being a center, you need to be able to shoot more than 1.5 free throw game or whatever he's average in the African League there, but he needs to get to the free throw line a lot more, but also shoot the free throws at a lot higher rate. As I said, the way the NBA has been trending, centers are being able to not only asked to shoot 3-point shots, they are also being asked to hit their free throws as well, which allows them to play in late game situations. And finally, his last weakness, it is something that is to be expected, as I said, with a lot of college players. He's only 18. He needs to get a lot stronger for his size, especially if you're playing the power forward center position. He needs to add on a lot of muscle. And if I am Ulrich, I'm definitely modeling my game after Giannis, and wouldn't surprise me if he's done that already. But those are some of the strengths and weaknesses. He is a very, very exciting player. I am really high on him, but we do have some other players to discuss because the Raptors just drafted and signed a bunch of players. So let's move on to player number 2 here. Now, with the first pick in the second round, with the 31st pick, the Toronto Raptors decided to draft Scotty Barnes' good friend Jonathan Mogbo. Now, who is he? He's a 6'6". He's 6'6". I don't know if you want to call him a guard. Some sites have him listed as small forward. Other sites have him listed as power forward. But he weighs 217 pounds. He's got an insane wingspan of 7'2". He's a little bit on the older side at age 22. So one thing I do want to say, he's your prototypical type of Messiah guy where he's got a large wingspan, plays with very high energy. And in terms of his stats here, he averaged 14.2 points last season. Great rebounder at 10.1 rebounds a game, 3.6 assists, which is absolutely fabulous for a forward. Also shot the ball pretty well, 63.6%. 9.5 attempts per game, made about 6.1 of them. Did not shoot a three at all. All right. I mean, he did attempt one because he attempted 0.1 threes a game, made about 0. He's not a 3-point shooter. Free throws, 69.2%. Average about 3.8 per game, made about 2.6, 1.6 steals, 0.8 blocks. Now, one thing I really like about this pick, because a lot of people had players like Tyler Smith, Kyle Filipowski, the thing this gives the Raptors is something that a lot of people would criticize with the 6'9" vision, but we know the Raptors have Kelly Olynyk, so it personally wouldn't have made a lot of sense to draft someone like Kelly and Kyle Filipowski, and Tyler Smith isn't a great defensive player, which again, it just kind of becomes a really odd mix there with Kelly Olynyk. The Raptors need defense. So in terms of some of his strengths, he is very athletic. It kind of gives him a different player to play at the forward position along with Kelly Olynyk. Kelly can shoot the threes. So while Jonathan may not be able to, it is not so bad considering that Kelly's able to. He's very athletic. He's an absolutely explosive athlete, super athletic. When you watch the way he moves, you would think he plays like someone that's at 6'10". He's listed at 6'6" without shoes, but he plays like a 6'10" guy. Very athletic, goes in for massive dunks, and just the way he moves around physically, he's very strong as well. He's also got good passing skills. One thing you notice about him in transition, it's really good passes for someone that's a forward position. Like I said, he averaged, I believe, 3.3 assists per game. That is excellent for Jonathan Mogbo. He's just a good passer, and anytime you have a passing forward, you could use that in Darko's system, so that's going to fit in really well. And he's going to need obviously shooters around him because he can't shoot threes, but we'll talk about that in a moment. In terms of some of his other skill sets, great in transition and a great rebounder as well. The Raptors could always use rebounding, right? Kelly Olynyk doesn't rebound all that well for his position, so then you can have Jonathan Mogbo come in, absolutely grab a lot of boards for you as well, which is not a bad thing at all. Now, we do have to talk about some weaknesses because he does have some that could be concerning for a lot of Raptors fans. Now, one thing he really, really badly needs to do is develop a jump shot. It doesn't matter. Forget the strengths for a moment. Being in the NBA, being a forward, you need to be able to shoot at least a little bit. His athleticism is great, which will help him get a lot of points in transition. But in terms of some of the other things, you you won't have a long career in the NBA because as you age, your athleticism goes down and down. Unless you're LeBron James, I mean, his obviously he's going to naturally lose a little bit of athleticism as he gets older. So he really needs to develop some sort of jump shot, at least get started, at least try to attempt some and just, really help you along the way to prolong your NBA career. And some of the other things he needs to do as well is needs to hit his free throws as well. Like I said, with a lot of players for a team like the Raptors, they need good free throw shooters. And you won't be able to play in late game situations if you cannot hit your free throws. That is a big concern. And the Raptors just overall aren't a great free throw shooting team. But also, just when you look at him, like you said, you have to, like I said, you kind of have to be a good free throw shooter to stay on the floor in the NBA, not even in the fourth quarter, but just you leave a lot of points there if you're not hitting your free throws at all. And lastly, he needs to improve his dribble game. If he is athletic, as we've seen in some of the clips, which he absolutely is, if he's able to develop his dribble game a little bit more, all of a sudden now you have someone that can maybe, go past, blow by some of the smaller forwards like Kyle Anderson. Although Kyle Anderson is a good defensive player, maybe that's a bad example. Maybe someone like a Rudy Gobert, pull him out to the 3-point line, maybe really dribble past him, or if you're going in pick and rolls, if you can develop that as a forward, it is a luxury to have. So again, Jonathan Mogbo definitely wasn't my first pick, but just seeing the way that he moves around the court, his physicality, some of the skill sets he brings, I think it really bodes well with the Raptors, and it gives them an opportunity to really play a different style of basketball, but also gives you players that are able to do different things. You don't want overlapping skills, which is some of the issues that the Raptors had with their 6'9" vision. So I like Jonathan Mogbo. He's a good player. I'm very curious as to how he'll do in the NBA and how the Raptors will use him as well. But let's move on to the next player here. And this is one of my favorite players that the Raptors signed to a two-way contract. And the Raptors decided to sign Brandon Carlson, quite an intriguing player. Now, there's a lot of interesting things about him, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But let's quickly talk about him. He's listed as 6'11.75, nearly 7 foot without shoes. Weighs 206 pounds though, so quite light. He's got a 7'1" wingspan, not massive wingspan considering his size, but he is 25 years old. This is what I'll explain in just one moment. He's also playing the center position as well. And in terms of his stats here, 17 points per game, 6.6 rebounds, 1.6 assists. He shot the ball well from the field, 50% from the field, 12.9 attempts per game, made about 6.4. Three-point shooting was great, 37.9%, attempted 4.7, made 1.8, and shot the free throws at a respectable rate at 71.4%, averaged 3.3 attempts per game, made about 2.4, 0.4 steals, and got 1.5 blocks per game. And I'm sure you guys noticed, so Brandon is 25 years old, and that is quite old for a college player. And we thought being 23 was a senior player in college. He spent, I believe, 5 seasons in college. He took a few years off after graduating high school, which is why he's on the older side. But you know what? For a team like the Raptors, I really don't mind this because at the end of the day, you need any sort of talent. But let's quickly talk about his strengths before we move on to his weaknesses. So he is quite the stretch big man. As you notice, sir, he's nearly 7 foot. He can stretch the floor, which is absolutely amazing. You need to stretch big there. And I know, like, people are going to say you have Kelly Olynyk. I'll explain why this is a different type of player. He's also a great rim protection as well. He's a really good shot blocker. And I'm not saying he's going to be defending the paint like Wemby or even Rudy Gobert, where he's getting a ton of blocks. He is not strong enough yet, but his size allows him to really get up there for some of the shots he does block. But in terms of pick and pop, he is someone he sets a pick for someone, you get him the ball, he's going to absolutely hit those jump shots. As you see, like, he's a good 3-point shooter, just a good shooter overall. And the last thing I want to say is he's a good off-ball movement player. And one thing I really like about that is the fact that, like I said, you really have to put players in a system where they're able to succeed really well. And seeing Brandon there, being in a system like Darko, where it requires players to be able to have multiple skill sets offensively, to shoot threes, to be able to move off the ball, to be able to pass. He does have a little bit of passing potential as well. Not ever going to be a great passer, but at least he can pass the ball at a really decent, respectable rate for a big man, right? So when you look at some of these strengths, now you're probably thinking he weighs so little. How is he going to be a center? I think when you think of guys like Brandon, I'm not comparing the players, by the way, guys. When you think of the way the NBA has been trending, think of someone like a Kristaps Porzingis. What did Dallas really struggle with was defending Kristaps Porzingis because of his size and the way he was able to stretch the floor. So when you think of someone like a Brandon, not saying he's locking players up, but just to have a 7-foot guy out there that can not only shoot threes, but put him on Kristaps. It gives him a little bit more size, makes it a little bit harder for someone like Kristaps to defend. And then also when you look at guys like Chet Holmgren as well, right? Maybe you can put him on that. Again, I'm not saying he's absolutely shutting those guys down, but just putting someone like that in the same kind of build, if you want to say, just to be able to put him on different types of skinnier, the modern day bigs, as a lot of people like to say, just gives you some sort of different skill sets. It's not like Kelly Olynyk, where Kelly isn't as skinny as someone like a Brandon, but he's just Brandon is able to move a little bit better than Kelly. So again, it gives you different skill sets than Kelly. Some similarities in terms of in terms of being a 3-point shot, but also Brandon is a better shot blocker as well. So let's talk about some of his weaknesses as well here. Now he needs to become a lot stronger. I'm not saying he needs to put on 30 pounds and all of a sudden be guarding, try to guard some of the bigger centers in the NBA. He doesn't, he realistically, he's not going to do that. That's not his game. That is not his style defensively as well. It is going to be somewhat of an odd fit when you think about it. But like I said, when you got so many guys like Chet Holmgren, you got guys like Kristaps Porzingis, you also got someone like a Lauri Markkanen as well that aren't going to be living in the paint, but more so on the perimeter and just jump shots. Putting someone like Brandon on there wouldn't be a bad situation, right? He does need to put on a little bit muscle, just 5-10 pounds of muscle would be great for him. He's also one of the weaknesses is his age, right? So he's 25 years old. He's not going to be projected to be an all-star. I believe I personally feel like he's going to spend a little bit portion of his first half of the season in the G League just to see how he can kind of perform against some of the other G Leaguers, some grown men, and then go on from there. Another weakness he has is he's not a great athlete. Again, most 7-footers aren't. Like when you look at Kristaps, he's not going to be soaring in like Giannis. When you look at guys like Chet Holmgren is a different breed, but when again you look at someone like Rudy Gobert, not the same type of body type, but in terms of guys like that, they're not going to soar in for Giannis. Not everyone's going to be Giannis, so he's not a massive athlete like that. But again, he does have limited skill sets, and I think those skill sets are very valuable to a team like the Raptors. So personally, I really love this pick. I think he could be a good rotational player for the Raptors in the future. Again, only a two-way contract. If it works out, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't, right? But I want to hear your thoughts, particularly on Brandon, because I think he has a very unique skill set, being a 7-footer, being able to block shots and being able to stretch the floor is a very, very unique skill set. And let's move on to our last player here for today's video. Now, this was the player the Toronto Raptors drafted in the draft pick they received for Jalen McDaniels. And with the 45th pick, the Toronto Raptors drafted Jamal Sheed. Now, who is he? He is listed as 6 foot, 200 pounds, 6'3" wingspan, 21 years old. He also plays the point guard position. He also averaged 12.9 points, 3.7 rebounds, 6.3 assists per game, shot only 40%, 40.9% from the field on 11.7 attempts, made about 4.8, and shot not so well from the 3-point line either at 30.9%. Made about 1.2, attempted 3.8. Free throws weren't that great considering his position. 77.9%. Again, shot 2.8, made about 2.2 of them, but he did get a ton of steals. 2.2 steals a game and half a block per game. Now, some of his strengths, what does Jamal bring to the Raptors? It's just he plays with a lot of heart. When you look at the way he really coaches some of his teammates, you can tell that he is a really good team player. And there was a video clip of him on Twitter. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but if you just YouTube Jamal Sheed on YouTube, and I'm sure it'll be one of the clips that pops up, pretty much what happened was his coach kicked over a garbage can, spilled all of the garbage out, and a lot of his teammates walked off the court. I'm sure there was some controversy there, and he was the only player that stayed back and put the garbage back and put all of the garbage back into the garbage bin and just put the garbage bin up. So it kind of tells you the kind of player he is. He's a good team player. He's also just genuinely good human being. I think that's an underrated part of being an NBA player. Sure, you can have skill sets, but if you're a shitty human being, not a lot of people will like you, or as at least from teammates and coaches' standpoint of view. So he's he's a good person. But in terms of some of the other strengths he possesses, he's also a really good defensive player. He's really strong for his size, like I said. He's also a good defensive player as well. And it doesn't surprise you. Like he uses his physicality really well. Like when you think of 6-foot guards, I'm not saying his game is like Kyle Lowry, but if you recall how Kyle really used his body physically on the defensive side, he wasn't the quickest of guys, but the way he was able to become physical, the way he would die for balls, that is something you get in Jamal there. I think he's just someone that is using his body so well without he doesn't foul too much. He also has really good hands as well, which is I think is really important when you think about, undersized point guards. To be able to be 6 foot, you need to have some sort of skill sets and at least be decent on the defensive side, but he's good on the defensive side. He's got good hands. He gets a lot of steals. He forces a lot of offensive players to turn the ball over as well, and he attacks the basket a ton. I believe he finished 61% of his shots at the rim, and he's a good athlete for his size as well as a good passer, which is great for a team like the Raptors. You know what? I'm not saying Jamal's going to come in there, steal minutes from Davion Mitchell, but some of the skill sets are kind of similar in terms of the defensive side anyways. but he's a good passer. He finds his teammates really well. And considering his size, again, 6 foot, he's also a really good athlete for his size as well. Now, in terms of some of his weaknesses, you saw there, just being 6 foot in the NBA, it is really difficult. One thing that does not go in his favor is just that he can't shoot the ball all that well. He needs to become a much better shooter if he ever hopes of being a good rotational player in the NBA. His three-point shooting wasn't great, and overall from the field, he didn't shoot spectacularly well. Despite his good defense, he also needs to become a better offensive player as well. Now, he also needs to improve his scoring. Like I said, you need to, it kind of coincides with what I was saying with shooting. He needs to become a better shooter overall. Forget three-point shooting, just overall. You need to have a jump shot. You need to be able to shoot a lot better than he does because he's also a little bit older too. He's 22 years old, so it gives him limited times before teams ultimately stop investing in him, right? In a couple seasons, he'll be 24. So it's very challenging for teams to justify signing him and really investing the time and resources into him. So he's going to definitely need to develop shots. He's going to need to become a better scorer because at the end of the day, we're seeing someone like Davion Mitchell. If you can't score at the NBA level, it doesn't matter. Your defense doesn't matter. You're a short guard. You won't last very long in the NBA, or at least you won't get teams investing in you, right? So again, those are the 4 guys I wanted to cover. They did sign a bunch of other guys to Exhibit 10 contracts as well, but these are the 4 guys I really like. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts about this. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Who is your favorite player that they have drafted in the second round or they signed via two-way contract? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And that will be it for today's video, guys. So if you are still watching this video, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Thank you guys for your support. I'm reading the comments and they have been super supportive the last video. So I really do appreciate it. Sometimes when we are making these videos, it does take quite a while, especially when it's like this, where you're spending so much time. And sometimes it's, you know what, even when I'm making it at nighttime, you're deciding between sleeping 6-7 hours, and it does take a few hours to put this together. And then, I mean, you're sleeping 4 or 5 hours, right? So I do really appreciate the support, guys. It means a lot. So thank you once again for watching this video. And I hope you guys have yourselves a great day and a happy long weekend and happy Canada Day for those celebrating.